Tonight, we take a little peek into the world of the supernatural, paranormal, and the mysterious. Lock your windows, lock your doors, and enter the alternate nightmare. It was the year 2018. My best friend and I were getting more adventurous as our senior year continued. We would stay out late smoking weed and walking around various neighborhoods or high-riding. 2 young, 18-year-old girls. My best friend Julia is about 5'5", brown hair, blue eyes. Then me being 5'9", blonde hair, blue eyes. Most would think we were absolutely stupid for doing some of the reckless things we did. Yet we did not care. We craved the adrenaline, and we were both a bit disturbed due to some trauma we experienced as individuals. Fear did not exist at the time, as we had been through enough scary situations to be numb to the idea of fear. Now, at the time it was close to the end of the school year, and honestly, our parents stopped paying attention to us most nights. I was home alone, and my best friend and I were left to do whatever we wanted most days and nights. That is when the idea of urban exploration became our new favorite thing to do. We explored all over our town in New Jersey and surrounding towns, although we could not find a building that was daring enough for us thrill seekers. After searching YouTube for a couple days, that is when I found it, the holy grail of abandoned buildings near us. Only 30 minutes from us into Pennsylvania was an old abandoned school that was home to delinquent children. After doing some personal research on the school, I came to find that the school was closed due to a fire that killed a student and teacher. Although after visiting the school a couple times, something told me several way more sinister things happened on the grounds of the school. There were about 25 buildings, so it took more than 6 times searching to really get the absolute full experience this school had to offer. On campus was a security guard who drove around in a blacked-out Jeep. He never would leave his car. Only once did he catch us, although he just told us to leave. Again, never leaving his car. I still wonder if he had the same feeling about the place as we did and that he found sanctuary never leaving his car. Since there were so many times we visited, I am only going to highlight the most terrifying moments we experienced. Of course, from least to most blood-curdling. To give you the ambience of what we were facing, I will tell you this. To get into the campus, you needed to cut through trees and bushes with thorns on them. Always wear pants when exploring. After you get through the brush, hopefully unscathed, you are greeted by several decaying buildings. The smell of mold and nature kind of all hit you at once. Absolutely everything there is overgrown and seriously falling apart. Graffiti is pretty much plastered everywhere. Besides the physical look, the gut-wrenching feeling you get when you walk foot on this property, that alone will make you want to turn back and never set foot there again. Something about this place seriously is wrong, and you feel as though you should not be there. Something I came to personally learn about this place is every time you come back, things seem to get more and more out of place and otherworldly. Walking into these buildings, most windows are boarded up, so you can only see using the small light on your phone. Other than that, it is pitch black. The first truly terrifying moment I had on this campus had to be finding the blood-chilling room, where it looked as though it was an old dentist office, or something medical. I am not sure why it was there, or what they really did there, but when I walked in I got this strange feeling of death. Scattered in the pitch-black room, all I could see was open syringes covering the floor, a dentist chair that had dried red substance, resembling blood all over it, and everything else in the room untouched. As my best friend and I explored this small, dark room, we began to hear footsteps coming from down the dark corridor. Trying to rationalize the noise, we automatically assumed it was the security guard and ran the opposite direction back out the small window we came from in the other room. Upon reaching outside, we hid behind some coverage and waited quite a bit of time. We did not hear the noise again, nor did anyone come out. The next time we came, we decided to try and find the building that contained an old game room in it. Since we explored most of the buildings, we figured out which one it most likely was. Searching the perimeter for it anyway, and checking doors we could not find a way in. Circling back, I found an old, dirty window which looked as if it opened to a dark, cement basement. Being the little badasses we were, I jumped through it almost immediately. Now, the first thing we saw as we walked out of the closet window was a wide open basement. With further analysis, we realized just how scary this basement was. The only thing down here besides it being absolutely freezing in mid-May was the old worn fireplace. Written above the fireplace was something demonic, or like demon worshippers had written it. Several pentagrams were graffitied. Looking towards the middle of the floor was red paint of a pentagram, a very big smack dab in the middle of the floor. Candle wax was everywhere, and it was accompanied by a strange smell. With the sense of existential dread suffocating the room, we darted towards the steps at the back of the room. We did not step foot in that basement ever again. The second to last time visiting the campus, we decided to be even more bossy and explore at night. It was roughly 12 at night, maybe slightly later. And, again, it was simply just my best friend Julia, and I, besides it being dark. Approaching the school made my blood run cold. Everything in my body was telling me to run the other way, and to not step foot back at this campus. Yet again, I ignored my gut instinct, and we began our journey through the woods to make it into the campus. Tonight was different. I decided to actually document our journey, as if we were on Ghost Hunter or some other paranormal show. The whole time I was recording, I would go back and forth from me to what I was seeing. As me and Julia began walking through the pitch black, using only her phone light, visibility was dim. We could see as much as 7 feet in front of us. The rest of this campus had been like it was not even there. Just utter blackness surrounded us. I was laughing and talking to my audience on my Instagram story, boasting about the trip as if it made me the coolest person ever to risk my life, just to see some buildings filled with asbestos, mold, and possibly homeless people. Just as I turned the camera to face Julia and sort of interviewed her about her current experience, is when I saw what made my heart stop and my jaw drop. I froze in the position I was in, just holding the camera, pointing in Julia's direction. As Julia looked past my camera, almost questioning why I got so quiet, she saw my face. The viewers at home could only see Julia's expression. It had said more to the people at home than either of us could explain. Seeing how absolutely horrified I was, and how my face had turned the lightest shade it could, she let out a scream and grabbed my arm, pulling me into a different direction. I felt as if I was no longer present, and adrenaline had taken over my body. My legs were moving, yet it felt like I was not controlling them. We jumped and hid behind a tree, as Julia pleaded with me to tell her what I had seen. For a couple minutes, I just sat there, trying to process what I had just seen. I did not want to believe anything scary and paranormal could be real. It felt like a true scary movie came to life. When I regained my ability to talk again, I told her exactly what I saw. When I tell you, you most likely will not believe me, for it is so utterly insane. It's almost laughable. That image will never leave my memory, for it is burned in forever. Standing right behind Julia, just in the shot of my camera, was a black large figure. With a closer look, I remember not believing what I saw, and becoming what felt like paralysis, as I was stuck staring at this figure, standing only 3 feet behind my best friend. A man on a large horse from what I could make out, no detail to him at all. Like he had literally been a shadow, just a blacked out figure. The worst part was his large, broad body seemed as if it had no head. I know it sounds crazy, but trust me, it absolutely was. I had heard stories of the Headless Horseman as a kid, yet I never expected to see anything like that in my walking hours of the day. After telling my best friend what I had seen, we hightailed it back to Jersey and decided to do some more research and see if anyone had any similar experiences, or the same one. As we searched, I found countless stories that made my bones hurt about this place and what other urban explorers had lived. One in particular made me literally almost faint. To be brief, this guy who had been really into exploring found this place years back and decided, like us, he wanted to keep coming back and see everything the campus had to offer. He explained how every single time he came back, weirder and weirder things happened to him, which to my knowledge was exactly how I had felt. But what he said next made my soul sink into the floor. He explained the last time he decided to go was at night. He explained how in front of the red house, he had been chased out by a headless horseman. My stomach sank. I went right back to the live video I had taken and watched it back. The part in which Julia looks at my horrified face directly. In the background sat the old decaying red house, half burnt down, My jaw dropped. We did not visit this place for a couple weeks. I would love to say I learned my lesson, and this is the end of the story. I would be lying. After a couple weeks had passed, our urge to visit the campus grew to an insane level, almost as if something was pulling us back, like we had strings attached to our bodies. Being the reckless kids we were, we decided 12 was not scary enough. Let's go at the devil's hour. 3 in the morning. Now, as we walk towards the woods, we need to cut through a thick fog that appears out of nowhere. If you think that was not enough to scare us away, you were right. I led the pack and proceeded towards a gap in the trees. As I am about 10 feet ahead of my 2 friends, I noticed some movement coming from the trees. We were not alone. Thinking who else may be out at 3 in the morning, I started shifting backwards, alerting my friends as I slowly backpedaled. Just as my friends looked in my direction, a deer came running right towards us. Right before it reached me, it stopped dead in its tracks, 2 feet away. This was like no deer I had ever seen. Again, I felt myself with short-term paralysis, as I felt like I was staring directly into the devil's eyes. The mist completely surrounds the deer like an animal, to the point I could not even see its feet. That's when I noticed its peculiar eyes glowing a weird yellow or red color. None of this seemed normal. That's when I noticed my friends booking it towards the street. Not wanting to be alone with this creature, I ran as fast as I could and eventually caught up with them. None of us wanted to admit how truly spooked we were, so we decided to try and find another entrance. Walking down the side road that followed next to the campus, we began to keep walking straight, occasionally looking for another opening. We then decided that at the end of the road, the campus had a church that sat on an open field. Thinking it was the safest way in, we kept walking down this road at 3:30, with absolutely no street lights. It felt like we had been walking forever, and small talk was at the minimum due to all of us low-key being scared shitless. That is when we heard it. We were almost to the church. It was about a quarter mile away from us. The sound of a chainsaw rang in all of our ears, sending chills down our spine. A chainsaw has a very distinct sound, yet in order to keep them faithful to the mission, I said, "Hey, maybe it's just a generator." Assuming they agreed with me, I proceeded walking towards the strange noise. Suddenly, the sounds of speeding footsteps broke my concentration. Only they were headed away from me rather than towards me. This is when the fear really hit me. My friends were so far away from me, panic began to set in. I was only brave if I had my friends there, easing my anxiety. The second I noticed them running, my heart sunk. The chainsaw grew louder and more aggressive. I'm downright sweating at this point. Finally, instinct kicks in, and I bolt towards my friends, somehow catching up with them immediately. We all decided to go home, since it felt like the campus was doing everything in its power to keep us out. To this day, I'm not sure what was lurking past those trees, but I am not willing to ever go back to find out. Just remember, if you decide to go urban exploring, never go alone, and always follow your gut, for you never know what your animal instincts could be protecting you from. I am now in my 40s, but was raised from the tender age of 2 in San Jose, Costa Rica, Central America, as a missionary kid with a dad and mom committed and engaged in Christian ministry full-time. My parents are originally from the Midwestern U.S. As you can imagine, this placed a tremendous amount of pressure on myself, the oldest of 6, and my siblings growing up, as I have always been highly impressionable. After watching the movie detailing the rapture, this is the belief that Jesus would come back for the righteous and leave everyone else behind to suffer unthinkable tortures for 7 years, and then on to hell they would go. I began to suffer from debilitating panic attacks brought on by my dwelling on the ideas covered in this movie. As a result of these panic attacks, and being my parents' first child, they were way out of their depth in trying to console me, and never having experienced anything like this themselves, were at a loss. My mother's diagnosis of what was happening to me was that I was being bound by Satan, and I needed to claim freedom in the name of Jesus, rebuking Satan. So, that's what we did. Yeah, it didn't work. As an adult and mother of 3 kids, one of which I am proud to state is a member of the U.S. military, and having shed the religiosity long ago, I will say that I suffered from religious trauma syndrome and am now truly cured, having released the fears I held onto for so long, and am now a healthy individual. On to the first story. Every year, the youth of our churches would gather at a makeshift campground to learn about the Bible, sing, play sports, and game and socialize with our peers. It was so much fun, until they decided to change the venue of the camps to a set of large log cabins in the outskirts of San Jose, a place called Escazú, where it is said witchcraft was practiced long ago. I was around 15 at this time, and we were mesmerized by these enormous cabins, with a stunning view of the city below, and the thinner, cooler air. One of the large buildings served as a large kitchen to feed the myriad youths and counselors, and in the same building on the upper floor was the gathering area where we'd learn and sing together. Right across a large, paved driveway was another large log cabin, 3 stories high, that would house the girls on the top 2 levels, and the guys on the bottom level. We were ecstatic to move into our lodgings for the next week. We ran upstairs, selected our bunks, and placed our clothing into the closets. There was only 1 bathroom per floor, and we would all be sharing it. There were probably around 15 gals on the 3rd floor, and about 20 on the 2nd floor. The first day went well. Sports, good food, and then we all went back to the 3rd floor cabin to get ready for the evening session. Bear in mind that in Costa Rica, there is no such concept as daylight savings time, and every day, year-round, the sun sets around 6 p.m., with no exceptions. It was dusk, and I was taking my turn in the shower, hearing the gals outside my door, chatting, laughing, getting ready. I could hear their bare feet on the wooden floors. You know how bare feet sound on a wooden floor. So, I step out of the shower, dry off, and put my clothes on. At this time, the bathroom was so steamy from my shower that I wanted to open the door to breathe in some cooler air. When I opened the bathroom door, I almost yelped. There was not one person in the 3rd floor room. Mind you, I could still hear footsteps all around me and laughing and chatting, but there was no one there. I swallowed hard and entered the bathroom, choosing to brush it off, and went on to very quickly put on some makeup, brush my hair, and head over to the gathering area. I was terrified as I descended the stairs to the 2nd floor. There was no one in that area either. I then booked it over to the other building, now fully horrified at what I'd experienced, and wanting to tell my best friend, Cynthia. I rushed up the stairs to the gathering area, sat down, and began bawling. I now had several people around me asking what was going on, and I explained what had happened to them. I was beginning to calm down after about 5 minutes when I saw a shy, quiet girl named Yahira sitting on the opposite side of the room, crying her eyes out. I approached her and asked what was wrong. She proceeded to tell me that she'd gone upstairs to our 3rd floor living quarters. This must have been only a couple of minutes after I'd run out of the building, and went to the closet to get a sweater, and the closet doors began to open and close violently, by themselves. I now had confirmation that what I'd experienced was not just my imagination. That evening, we were so afraid to go back to the room. It was our first night there, and none of us wanted to head up to the 3rd floor to sleep. As we made our way up, we could all hear it, footsteps, low voices talking, muffled laughing. We shoved all of the bunk beds together, and all held hands. We prayed aloud and rebuked whatever haunted us that night. We managed to eventually fall asleep from utter exhaustion, and woke up in the morning to the same muffled noises. We later had a meeting about the incident on the 3rd floor, now gathering on the 2nd floor, and to my utter dismay, my best friend stated publicly that she didn't believe what we were experiencing was anything troublesome, and that it likely had a practical explanation. I was fuming, and we didn't speak much for the rest of the time at the camp that week. We never learned what had happened to us, or why it had happened, and we disagreed about the incidents for several years into the future. We did end up going back to that camp, or cabins, the next year, and never again. Had a similar experience. All was quiet the next year, and due to pure defiance, we did stay in the 3rd floor room again, just to prove that we were no longer afraid. The next incident, though not a scary one, is still baffling to me. I was with the same best friend, Cynthia, and where I lived at the time in Costa Rica was a very small home built on the same lot as our church was located, in a poor area of town. and where we'd walk around regularly due to its relative safety. At the time, our home, to fit a family of 8, was being built at the time, and to save on rent, we lived there for about a year and a half. We were on our way to see a mutual friend, Mariella, and her home was about a 10-minute walk from the church. We set off, and when we were rounding the corner to her house, we saw her walk into her home, placing her white tennis shoes on the front steps to the home before entering. We almost called out, but figured we'd approach the home and ask for her to come out instead of yelling. When we walked up to the front of the home, her mother greeted us at the door, since it was already open, and we asked if she could come out. Mariella's mother proceeded to tell us that she was not home. I laughed, since I'd seen her enter just a moment ago, and asked if she was joking. The thing is, Mariella's mom was a very shy, serious woman who didn't know us well enough to joke around with us. I asked if we could enter and check for ourselves, and as it was a tiny home, within a minute we checked every inch of the house and she was, indeed, not home. We were stunned and could not understand what we'd seen, if not her. Any ideas on what this could have been? I have other experiences from my time living in Costa Rica, but they are from when I was younger, and I am honestly unsure if I can trust my memory of the things I experienced. I have always had an active imagination and high sensitivity to my surroundings, and wouldn't have recounted the stories mentioned above had they not been corroborated by others. Let me know your thoughts, as I am open to hearing your theories. Hi. For this story, I will be talking about my mental state and my anxiety/paranormal experience. My sister and I were always home alone. You see, my mom and dad work a full-time job. My dad, a businessman, and my mother an accountant. My dad would work from 6 in the morning to 6 p.m., so a 12-hour shift each day, and my mother would work from 8 in the morning to around 7 p.m. This is all including their drives home. So, I was a kid going through some mental stuff, such as anxiety. This was one of my huge issues I have, but the difference is that it's now under control. Anyway, my sister and I didn't have any after-school activities at all, so we would just come home and do homework, or be bored scrolling on YouTube. Let me just say our parents didn't come home till late evening, and we would get home at 3. So, a good 3 whole hours, all by ourselves. Sometimes it would be 4. So, my first signs that I thought my house was haunted was that I kept hearing little noises everywhere. I would hear like a tiny crack on the wood floors, or the walls crackle. At this time, our house was fairly new, but keep in mind that at this time, all my fears were out in the open because of my anxiety. One of my biggest fears was a break-in. Let me just say that we live in the safest city in our state, according to records, and that something like that was almost impossible. But my brain said otherwise. I would sit in the corner of my room, thinking about all the different possibilities there were for someone to break in and kill me. The list goes on forever, but here are a few examples. So, someone would break in through the back door, or my house, then run to find me and my sister, then would either shoot us or torture us until we died. I am the older one, so I had this sort of responsibility over my sister. Another example was that they were already inside the house, and they would just appear out of nowhere. This is not paranormal, but we will get onto that bit a second. Anyway, the ideas would play through my head for hours until a parent got home. To be honest, I think I tricked myself into thinking I heard noises, but I really didn't, because of my anxiety disorder that I didn't know I had at the time. In relation to the little noises, I was once at home with my sister, and I heard footsteps down our hallway. I was in her room with her, and I heard them. They couldn't be my pets. They were indeed human steps on the wood floor. I start to break down, thinking one of my fantasies were coming true, and then they just stop. My sister sees me crying and asks what's wrong. I brush it off, because I don't want her to get freaked out either. My parents come home, and they brush it off as well, thinking that it was just our cats, when I full well knew that that was not. Weirder and weirder. Things just kept happening after that. A picture fell off our wall in our hallway, and my sister screamed, a traumatizing scream, and when I turned around to the noise, I swear on my life I saw a black shadow run into my parents' bedroom. It was probably only for half a second, but I swear I knew it was someone. So I took my sister by the hand and ran outside to our front porch and waited till my dad came home. Luckily, it was not that long, maybe 5 minutes. He went in and looked around and didn't see anything while putting the picture back on the wall. That wasn't the worst of it. I once saw a woman in white in a doorway and then vanish, and this other time, black mist ran across the path I was walking. It was getting so bad, and my paranoia was killing me that I couldn't sleep in my own room. My sister would have to, but I still felt like I had to protect her, so that was not enough. Every night, I would beg for my mother to sleep in my room with me. I was terrified for my life. I acted like if I was not with her I would actually die, and that's how I thought too. My mother just thought I was being a wimp, and she would force me to sleep in my room alone. It was painful. I would barely get any sleep. I would think I see shadows, or people, or noises. I was absolutely being tortured by my mind, and I could not do anything about it. One of the most traumatic things that happened was when I was at home on a Saturday, so my parents were home. I was sitting on my bed, scrolling through my social media. Then I saw something in the corner of my eye. It was my mom. She was walking down my hallway. I was confused because she was supposed to be making breakfast. So I called out to her to see what she was doing. No response. I got up and walked down the hallway attempting to follow her, looking in each room, still calling out, "Mom." My blood turned cold when I heard her downstairs. She was downstairs making breakfast. Then, what did I just see? I sprinted downstairs, tears pooling in my eyes, terrified. She brushed it off again and thought I was just being dramatic. It was horrible. My experiences that I have had were living hell. Those little experiences would happen more and more. For a whole year, I eventually begged my mom to go to a professional and see what the hell is wrong with me. My therapist said that I have extremely high anxiety, like the abnormal type, and that's why I am terrified. My mom finally listened to me when I told her my experiences. She still holds it against herself to this day, regretting that she didn't listen to me sooner. I was super upset about it in the beginning, but we both got therapists and worked it out. I came here to write this because anyone that experienced or is experiencing anxiety, you are never alone. Everyone has their own demons they are fighting, and most of them can be closer than you think. But it's way worse when your demons are in your head, your mind projecting your fears into your reality, and believing they are there. Just know that you are not alone. It is always okay, and these are all fixable. You are never alone. I thought I was alone. Then I heard from more people. They have the same or similar things. It helps me cope. All I learned from this is that your demons are not always in a physical state. If tonight's story scared you, be sure to hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more terrifying stories